me feeling like I'm academics.
Chat, it's starting to happen. YouTube has announced that, so if you guys don't know, on Spotify, for example, the most popular playlist is a curated playlist by, some very powerful people over at Spotify. Shout out to my man, Carl Cherry. It's called Rap Caviar. If you don't know, part of what Ebro's job is at Apple is that he's the global music head of hip hop. And he's kind of responsible of all playlists that get made in terms of hip hop, which means there's actual curators. And I've told you, a guy like Ebro, he has certain gripes. He doesn't like certain people. You're not going to get on the playlist. But like on Spotify, like it's really about taste making. And shout out to my man Carl Cherry. He doesn't really play favorites, but like he's trying to like create dope palettes of music that people could like. YouTube Music, they are announcing that curators are no longer needed. They've done something interesting. They have rolled out a AI playlist generator, which means people like Ebro and even people like Carl Cherry, who's my guy, they're saying we don't need those people. We could have an AI that kind of determines what this person's into, and rather have one definitive playlist like it's radio back in the day. Everybody should have their own curated playlist. Now, I know some of y'all might be like, well, they kind of have this already. Like, they'll suggest me songs that I already kind of like. No, this is completely different. They're rolling out a new AI-powered playlist. It's going to allow premium users on iOS and Android to use text prompts to create playlists. They could go to the library, tap new, so you could create your own playlist, and you could get started. You could just say anything like, hey, I want some sad post-rock or progressive house mix for a chill party, or indie pop or 90s classic music. Or you could be like, yo, just give me some drill music. They've been toying around with AI with playlists for a while, since 2024, but now they're finally letting it go. Other rival services like Spotify, Amazon, and Deezer have also rolled out AI-powered playlists, but it hasn't been this expansive, just to let you know. Like, for example, they still have their human-curated playlists, which YouTube is trying to do away with. YouTube isn't trying to make premium plan more attractive to users. Earlier this week, it started restricting viewers from seeing free viewers from seeing song lyrics. And yeah, they're trying to, give their premium users some things to make them feel good, and AI playlist is the thing. Now, I've been talking a lot about AI recently, chat. It's happening. These companies seemingly have to put this into existence, because every company, from Google, who owns YouTube, Amazon, who owns like Twitch, Spotify, that's invested by companies that are leveraged in AI, TikTok, that's now owned like 15% by a company that's also super heavy investing in AI. AI seemingly is a thing that is coming, and is coming quickly. Pause. And we're going to see what happens with everybody and how they treat it. A lot of people believe we're in a bubble. They're comparing it to two actual bubbles. One is the .com bubble, which is the quote-unquote bubble that happened when everyone believed that internet companies were going to just completely take over the world. What ended up happening is that the bubble ended up bursting, and it was too much leverage off the market at the time. And a lot of those companies went bankrupt, or they were realized that they weren't worth anything. It's comparable to what AI is now, because most AI companies, they don't make money. So these AI companies, and I don't know if you guys, just to kind of explain AI a little bit more to you guys, essentially, this is how AI works, right? They're basically using computers to do lightning quick, the fastest computers ever, to do lightning quick predictions, right? This is the majority of what AI is now. So, for example, when you ask Siri, not Siri, but you ask an AI, like, hey, write me something, there's no brain. Like, what's to imitate the human brain, that we're not at that point of AI yet. So what they do is they train on what humans already put out there. Like, for example, y'all might not know, but AI has been training on Reddit and Reddit responses. That's where most humans actually give qualitative responses, and people can vote up and vote down, and they train on that to be able to give qualitative answers. Actually, it just came out that AI responses, finally, the number one method of training it is not Reddit anymore. It's YouTube. Reddit, YouTube. This just came out like today. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Exclusive. Or not today. I guess recently. YouTube is now overtaken Reddit. So when you're thinking you're talking to this AI and it's like, oh, whatever. Like, it's like finding a bunch of Reddit posts that kind of has to do with what you're kind of asking, and they kind of like almost like mirror the best possible option, and they put it to you as a possibility. It's not like so it says now YouTube is overtaking Reddit as a go-to citation on AI searches, right? And essentially the problem, or this whole conundrum with it, this is why people think it's a bubble. So the first bubble was this .com bubble. Like, for example, Mark Cuban, if you guys don't know, Mark Cuban sold a company. It was called broadcast.com sale, and he sold it for $5.7 billion. Okay? He sold it to Yahoo. It was this hope that this company could do all these things that it ended up couldn't do it. For example, so broadcast.com was the ability to try to broadcast things, like, say it was like radio stations via a website. So this is the first like kind of like streaming thing, right? Yahoo saw it, bought it, and realized none of the technology was proprietary. I'll tell you what that means. It means that they paid $5.7 billion in stock. Mark Cuban cashed out. He's now officially a billionaire. And essentially what was being used is that they were using like a real player and like some really antiquated stuff. They just made it look good. And at that time, people thought anything that was a .com, that's why it's called a .com bubble, it was valuable. So Yahoo bought it, thought they were buying some really good technology or some shit that's ahead of its time, only to figure out those guys weren't doing nothing new. So they spent a lot of money for no reason. Mark Cuban took this money. He eventually bought the Mavericks and this and third. When did he buy the Mavericks? Mark Cuban buys Mavericks. But there's a whole thing on Mark Cuban. Like, the guy's, when did he first buy it? When did Mark Cuban first buy the Mavericks? He first bought it for $285 million. He gets like $4 or $5 billion from Yahoo for him being one of the first people to have like this .com, which is broadcast.com, which people thought was super proprietary for streaming. It wasn't. Yahoo buys it, he cashes out, he goes on. At that time, mad companies spent mad money on internet companies that they thought was worth something but wasn't making any revenue. So that was the bubble. Basically, everyone learned, yes, the internet was going to be around, but the companies, or the internet companies that first started up that you're paying for, some of them was worth nothing. Obviously, the internet dominates things now, which this is where it's going to be parallel with AI, right? For example, no one's actually denying that AI won't be utilized to some extent, or maybe really a lot of extent in the future. It's just the companies now who are claiming that they have a stake on AI, most likely they won't be around. So people are going to cash out at a certain point and those companies are going to go away. And then the real winners are going to be the ones that last 20, 30 years from now. The next bubble, other than the .com bubble in 2000, was not necessarily bubble, but it was a kind of a crash. But I guess a crash usually happens with a bubble, because when a bubble bursts, that's the crash. It was the housing bubble. So the housing bubble ends up being, and I don't know how old you guys are. I mean, I was obviously a fucking little kid at that point, but in 2008, the housing crisis. What was realized is that banks were giving out mortgages, and a lot of these mortgages was overly leveraged. And what ended up happening is that after a lot of these mortgages weren't fulfilled and, just too much debt, you're over leveraging this and third, when shit couldn't be paid off, there became a massive spiral, and it turned into what's called the subprime mortgage crisis that turned into a recession for the country, and pretty much everybody was in despair. The current bubble they think is going to happen, they had thought there was going to be one for crypto, but I think crypto avoided it. They think it's AI. Because in AI now, everybody is putting billions of dollars, right? Like if you were lucky enough, for like around a year ago, or maybe two, you'd be really lit right now. If you had invested in any of these AI companies, which is OpenAI, well, that's a private company, but they have what's the other one name? It starts with a P or something. You'd be cashing out because everyone's thinking AI is just going to be so big, and every company's betting billions, that people think that whenever it takes over, it's going to bring in trillions. Again, not saying it's not going to be part of the future, but right now, people can't see the value in some of the stuff. Like, do you think it's worth $1 trillion to have ChatGPT tell you how to fucking, I don't know, build a website or whatever you might ask ChatGPT. So that's the point, and that's kind of where we're at. And a lot of people believe that the biggest players, they're going to go bankrupt really quickly. So everybody's on a waiting game. Either this shit's going to work for everybody, which highly unlikely, or there's going to be a crash soon. And the crash is just going to be companies going out of business because they're not making money. They continue to need money. And I'll explain just simply how AI works, right? Just simply. So I've told you the players in AI. And let me I want to give you a little bit of a understanding here of kind of how it goes. So you have a few different things, right? So for AI to work, remember, it's not a human brain. You need really three things or three different companies. I mean, we don't have yet where one person is one, it could do all three. So it's three different things that matter. First and foremost, I think I explained how it's these days they do it's depending on what type of AI you're trying to do. Most people are trying to go really in depth, so they're trying to do these large model or large language model AIs, which means these are the really in depth that you could just talk to the AI, right? So like that's what people prefer. Like you could feel like you're talking to a person. They could react. They could do this. They could do, like that's supposedly the really dope part about AI. Here's the problem with that. It requires a lot of power. So I'm going to explain AI really quickly in terms of just how and why supposedly all this shit's going to crash. Watch this. Okay. So you need the end product or the software that is going to be, the AI is going to be trained to manifest that. So we're talking about OpenAI, ChatGPT, right? We're talking about Grok. We're talking about, it's actually called Google Gemini. That's their enterprise version. But we'll even say that even equals, I see these days when we hit search, like if I hit search right now on the Google thing, hold on, I don't want to like dox myself because I know that's, like if I go here and I'm like, yo, I don't know, did Bad Bunny fall on stage? If I just type this into Google, it just comes up with an AI overview. So Google has its own AI, but its main thing is called Google Gemini, right? And there's a few other places like, I'm going to try to make this a little bit more simple for y'all. So we have Amazon who's investing in AI, and we have Apple. Actually, Apple kind of quit. Apple announced Apple was trying to create AI because they have Siri and they wanted like a more elaborative AI thing. Apple actually said, "Fuck putting all that money in there. We're just going to." They did a deal with Gemini, so now on the iPhones, Gemini is basically paying Apple to be the AI that your phone is going to use. So Apple, rather than get in the race of this AI shit, which they got the money, they're just going to pay Google to be the AI on your phones. Okay? So basically, AI is going to be the, whatever. And there's some more. What else is AI? Let me see. What other AI companies? Anyway, these are kind of AI companies, right? Remember, Grok is X. Now, and you're going to see there's like a bottleneck effect. So all of these are AI companies. Now, what they all kind of need, right? What they all kind of need is two things to work. So these are the companies, that's ChatGPT, Grok. What do they need? They need a data center, right? Where the AI is going to live, like a cloud / data center, and they need chips, which are going to be the things that power the AI. So let me show you how this kind of goes. Essentially, oh, my bad. What the fuck? It's a right triangle. Here, okay, wow, okay, too much. Here, and there's actually about like 10 other like companies that's smaller. I don't want to be inaccurate, but all of these go to Oracle. And Oracle is like the cloud where the AI is going to be, operating and store all the information and be able to move or whatever the case is. And in some cases, Oracle is going to be controlling like some of these data centers or whatever the case is. The reason why I'm saying ChatGPT and Grok go to Oracle, because Google, they got their own thing. Google's rich as fuck. And Amazon, they got their own thing as well, even though there was thought that they were going to collaborate with Oracle. Anyway, so we're going to just put these two right here. And we're just going to put unknown or self-made. And then on the other side of it, which is even the most important side, is this and this. And this is all that matters, right? So they have so Google, Gemini, and Apple and Amazon, their AI shit goes to some self-made like data cloud, or like, they're going to make their own fucking data centers. But essentially everything goes to, because the requirement is NVIDIA. You need actual chips. And only NVIDIA, well, actually, AMD does too. But NVIDIA has been the leader. So you kind of see the bottleneck effect. They're all of these companies, they're on a rat race. Most of them need Oracle. Some of them are big enough, like Google and Amazon, to be self-made in terms of the data, the data center and the cloud that's going to be under. But they all need chips. So it's going to be NVIDIA, which is like 80%. And then AMD, which is like 20%. And that's AI, right? Now, here's some crazy stats about like even profitability, right? So you guys get like a little general workflow. I'm going to give you like just some staggering stats. So unless you only want to use AI to be like, hey, how could I unlock my car if my key is dead? And AI figures a way out because they go on Reddit and they go on whatever and they come up with a nice response for you. If you want to get AI to be really fucking advanced, one of the limiting things with AI, so now we have this chart flow. The limiting things are going to be this. Limits to AI. 1, power. So really, one of the limits is also chips. Everything goes to here. So NVIDIA and AMD, they need chips. So no matter what they got going on over here, it's good to have a cloud. It's good to have some data center, but you need chips. So without NVIDIA and AMD, and there have been people trying to get them to produce more. Also, here's also the problem with the chips too. So well, first is power. All right, let me explain the power part first. So technically, the data centers required to run these chips and work with Oracle and work for ChatGPT. You know, Grok niggas is saying, yo, could you put her in a bikini? Yo, could you put her in a burqa? Yo, could you put her like, you know what I mean? Like doing a push-up? Like they do everything, and the AI got to work like this. Everybody's doing it. And also, here's the thing. People could do it for fucking free. There's no paid, well, there's certain ways, there's certain things you could pay to do. Like, for example, you could pay, there's Sora, right? So Sora is actually also, I don't know if you know, Sora is owned by OpenAI. Sora 1 and Sora 2. Sora 2 got slowed up because they can't meet the demand right now. But Sora 2, I don't know if you guys know where Sora is. You could go in there and have, and you could literally say, I want to have Martin Luther King crip walking, and you're gonna have him crip walking. You could have him say, have Martin Luther King say, fuck this, and it'll be Martin Luther King saying that, right? That's that program. The point what I'm trying to say is heavily intensive on power. So the power required to make all this shit happen, because you got to train the AIs, it's like all of this power to, for these really fast chips, this and third, it comes down to a power thing. The data centers that they're trying to open, and they need to open to advance this technology, are going to be, this is in power terms now, 50 gig or 100 gig like data centers that are going to be able to drive enough power to have these things operate that rapidly, quickly, for millions of people to be using, and that they could be training consistently. Let me give you some details on that. These data centers could cost literally billions of dollars, $50 billion. Most of these data centers, as they're getting contracts now to build them, these things require so much power. You might not understand how much 100 gig of power is, right? Or power units. It would be the essential, like one of these data centers, if it's like 100 gigs, it would be the equivalent of power in 4 million houses. So this ain't some shit you just be like, yo, tell PSC and G to come over here. No, fuck that. These data farms and data centers that AI is going to be housed in requires as much power to power 4 million houses. What does that mean? They're going to have to make their own power plants. They're going to have to make their own power plants. Somebody says solar power. Well, no, because, actually there's a theory that Elon is going to eventually make his own data centers, but he's going to do it in space. The reason why, he's going to use Tesla technology and SpaceX technology to create, he's going to create basically solar powered, but from space. Why from space? Number one of the biggest problems when you have so much power is heat, and how do you get rid of it? You got to cool devices because it's a lot of power. If you're in space, that's not a problem in terms of, you're not going to heat up space, right? You're going to heat up a fucking building or like a huge like plant with just so much power being drawn. Secondly, Elon would try to use solar a lot. If you do it on Earth, there's nowhere where there's sunlight all 24 hours a day. So you're going to be missing huge watts or wads of power when this is really power intensive. If you put it in space, you could put it in orbit that it always fits around the sun. So the sun could always be hitting this hitting this solar panel thingy that's going to be powering this thing. So people think that Elon's going to eventually. Some of this is like conspiracy kind of, but it makes sense. Okay, so power is this huge thing, right? So you got to pay billions of dollars to build this data center and get it powered. Some of these things going to need a nuclear reactor to fucking power it. So this is not a regular thing. And I think I could probably Google this. Let's see, 100 gigs of data center AI. All right, okay.
A couple are observability.
All right, I don't want to give you guys. Here we go. Maybe.
How have networks evolved over just a little bit?
It was just a few years ago when we were in shock that we're doing 100 gig in our data centers. Now the data center, the GPU networks are 400 gig.
Okay, yeah, I just want to give you like the cost of some of this shit. This shit is like ridiculous, you know? Let's look. Cost of 100 data center AI. It's billions of dollars. Okay? So there's an AI data center. Look, 80 billion. 80. Okay. He estimated that building a fully outfitted 1 gigawatt AI data center could cost $80 billion. And they're trying to get this. So, okay, this is actually old. This is old. But the point is, you're spending billions of dollars on a data center. Now, here's the problem. So one of the limits is power, right? One of the limits is power. You got to, they're saying that to run one of these things, you could power 4 million houses. Shit, that looks like a lot. Costs a lot. The next thing is, by the way, we're not talking about how we're going to make money from AI yet. We're just talking about establishing AI. So this is all investments, nothing about profit. Imagine going into a business and just thinking about, let's spend all the money to make it, and then we'll think about how to make the money. Because we think money's going to be there. So one of the limits is power. The next limits is the idea that these chips that need to run these data center to process all the information, apparently because everybody's waiting on funding and shit does take a while to build, when you order them, and y'all know this about a computer, it's like a car. If you buy a car today, but it don't get to you in 3 years, there's a newer car. So what happens is these chips, they're expensive as shit. You're spending $50 billion to build the infrastructure for it, but by the time it's done being built, there's probably newer chips. So now all these companies are saying, what the fuck? We can't have old technology. So they're thinking about leasing them, not buying them. But even then, if you built a data center based on one particular chips and 3 years later, it's a clusterfuck. So the second thing is, this is the limits. Chips become old too quick. So this is why I'm giving reasons why people think this AI bubble is going to burst, right? So one is power is really power intensive. The second, chips become old too quick. What else? Oh, 3 is the obvious. None of these companies are making money, which is the biggest one, right? So Apple and Amazon, when they were flirting with AI a little bit more, they used to include in their earnings how much money they anticipate from getting from AI. There's no one with a foolproof way of monetizing AI yet, because obviously the whole industry isn't fully built. That's why they say, oh, use ChatGPT for free. So you're using something for free that's costing them billion. Just to give you a little, idea about AI, OpenAI that owns ChatGPT and Sora, they're losing $15 million a day. 15. And they're advertising to you, yo, use us for free. Obviously, you know what they're thinking. Once we done built this shit, like, it's going to be so useful and necessary to your life, you're going to pay, I don't know, $10 a month, $20 a month. Then they're going to expect that it's going to be so, synonymous with just life. Everybody's going to become like a subscriber or whatever the case is. But would you? Especially when there's other things that could kind of mimic what they're doing. So none of these companies are making money. OpenAI, their revenue supposedly this year might even be less than $10 billion, but they have over leveraged themselves, and I think that's number 4, over leverage. They've all leveraged themselves. So this is called the AI circle jerk. Let me tell you how it works. And this is why I went on the soliloquy, the monologue about nothing is real. Maybe I should use charts more. So OpenAI, they make $10 billion a year. However, in 10 years, they're promising they're going to make 1,500. No, they took on 1,500. Just do the math on it, right? Somebody making $10 billion a year shouldn't agree that in, I think about 7 or 8 years from now, or let's call it 10. In 10 years from now, they're going to be able to take on 1,500 billion. Just do the math. If you're making 10 billion this year, and let's times it by 10, that's 100 billion. So if you just keep making 10, 100 billion. They've committed to 1,500, not 100, 1,500 billion. That's 1.5 trillion. Contracts and so forth. So what does that mean? They have to grow exponentially. They have to. If they don't grow exponentially, they can't afford it. So they're not making money right now. And they're just planning for the future because everybody is making the bet. In 10 years, we're all taken over by AI. Okay? So they're over leveraging. So let me explain the circle jerk. They're saying, well, we think we're going to make trillions in the next 10 years. Oracle, which was like a defunct company, is ran by Larry Ellison. They're saying, yeah, AI is going to be the future. So they have to believe them. So everybody's worth goes up by believing the other dummy. Okay. 1.5 trillion. Okay, let's do it. They believe them. And then Oracle goes to NVIDIA and promises them 300 billion. So these guys promise these guys 300 billion. These guys promise these guys and these guys 1,500 billion. That's 1.5 trillion. So you get to realize at right now, we're not talking about no profitability. We're just talking about promises. So this guy promised this guy 300 million. This guy promises, no, actually, at first it was 300 million between them, but then they promised 300 here, but definitely overall 1,500, but they make 10 billion a year. Grok, they're kind of in and out because it's Elon. Elon wants to figure out his own way to do shit, but it's Elon. So that's why people are saying maybe he sends his shit to space. They're already saying that Elon is trying to combine all his companies. He's trying to combine SpaceX, X, or actually AIX, which I think that's his AI company. And they think possibly Tesla, because Tesla not only is it a car company, it's a battery company. So they're saying if all three combine, he could send shit into space and whatever. So that's happening. Google Gemini is saying, yo, we're Google, we always win. Apple is like, fuck, we sell phones and computers. We'll just use one of y'all. We'll pick the winner. And then Amazon is like, fuck, we got to get up in this shit somehow. So they're like promising that they're making like investments too. But how much will they, invest as opposed to, because they already have a winning business model. Their fear is that they don't want to get replaced because they don't want to invest. So everybody's scared that AI is going to take over. They're not involved. So they're trying to keep one foot in the race. but it's a bunch of people promising more money to the other person and the other person promising even more to the other person. And it kind of looked like a Ponzi scheme, which exactly looks like a bubble. And if you ever think about what I just said about the housing bubble in 2000 and, not 2000, but 2008, but the dot-com bubble, if nobody's making money, nobody's kind of technically worth anything, at some point, you run out of money or you run out of promises. So that's the problem. That's the problem. I'll give you this one last thing about AI and we can move on. Oracle, one of the super most important companies. By the way, they also have been starting to like throw the government into it. Like, because now these motherfuckers are asking for loans, right? Or asking for trust that they're going to make billions of dollars, that companies are starting to say, well, like OpenAI still gets funded, right? It's a private company. And people are funding it on their promise that, we're going to invest 1.5 trillion, but now they're saying, what the fuck? So it's turned into like a really odd thing where people are now saying, I don't know if we want to invest anymore. So they're going to the government, even though the CEO, Sam Altman, the guy who looks sketchy, he's like, nah, we don't need the government to back it. Why do they want to go to the government? If the government says, if y'all niggas can't pay this, we're going to back this because we believe that AI is going to be the future. The government has all the money. It's the government. The government could create money. If they back it, all these companies like breathe a sigh of relief. But we all been there when it came to 2008. That's what bailouts are, right? Essentially, y'all niggas can't pay y'all bills. You should be bankrupt. You should not be a company. But because the government feel you're so necessary, for example, all the car companies, they bailed them out. So they're asking the government now, hey, what's up? Would y'all, it's going to be the future. They're kind of throwing things in like, AI could help the government out too. So that's kind of what's happening. But I'll just say this last thing about Oracle to move on. So Oracle, owned by Larry Ellison. The interesting thing about Oracle, and there's a whole conspiracy about it, is that Oracle, and you know me, I'm not like Sneaker or one of these guys, but so Oracle is owned by Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison is I think he's a Russian Jew or he's a Jew. Okay. We're not getting to no anti-Semitic thing. The point is this. There's working theories of people feeling like Oracle, who got the algorithm of TikTok and was hosting the data, still is, of TikTok once it got taken from, Chinese hosted places. Now they ended up buying and own part of 15% of TikTok. There is a thought that Oracle, whether through training AIs, as they're involved with all the AI software here, right? Or AI companies, Grok, Sora, ChatGPT, but also they're owners of TikTok or part owners of TikTok, and they control the algorithm. They claim a lot of that is from a mass hysteria within communities that anti-Semitism is on the rise. So if they feel like people are now, we've gotten to a time in society where people feel like they could say anti-Semitic things, the way to curb that is not to like just be on social media and bash them. Well, if you're Oracle and you're ran by this Jewish guy, right? You know what you do? You fucking flick the algorithm that if you say some anti-Semitic shit, it don't pop up no more. So that's a thought as well, that Oracle and its importance is actually needed, and it's actually being propped up. That's why, they be saying the U.S. government love Israel already. That's why Oracle is getting all these favorable, because trust me, Oracle was like dead in the water, and now they're the most popping thing popping. You know what I mean? And they're saying it's one of the ways to make sure that Jewish people could fucking alter the rhetoric that's on TikTok to make sure it's not anti-Semitic, but also they could influence AI. Okay? And now you see where, the influence of AI is going to be if Oracle's here. It's ran by a Jewish dude. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I'm not Myron. Shout out to Myron, though. But, yeah, they point that out. They also point out that, Paramount, Skydance, they're trying to do the same thing in the movie industry. And this is where the power of you being a particular, race or religion, that's where you would control this at. Like Oracle at this point has a say in music because they own part of TikTok and they control the algorithm. Oracle is going to control AI. They're going to be the database that it's going to live on. Oracle is, by, proximity, going to control the film and TV industry if they get to buy Warner Brothers over Netflix. And obviously that's Paramount Skydance, but that's the son, that's the Jewish son of the other guy. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it, even though I just did. But everything I just said, we're at a nice precipice, or an impasse, actually, or an inflection point, whatever you want to say it, fork in the road, of what's going to happen with AI, and we're going to see it soon. I think AI will live on, but a lot of these companies, I think some of them are going to go. I think OpenAI is going to go. Sora is going to go. It's owned by that. Grok is going to find a way to stick around because no one defeats Elon, right? Google's always going to be around. Amazon's always going to be around. But there's a million other AI companies that I didn't list, and I think that's going to happen. And I think Oracle is going to become the most powerful company in the world, which the ramifications of that will be interesting. Okay? Which is interestingly enough, I'll give you some more on this, right? And shit, I feel like I'm Myron now. What the fuck? But I'll give you a little bit more. Which, interestingly enough, when a company becomes that powerful, this is where you get the fucking, the people who. This is where you get the Epsteins, right? So Epstein's two financiers, right, were two guys. Shit. It was two guys that funded Epstein. Remember the first guy we said, Lex Wexner, is this guy. Now, if you don't know, I don't want to get too much into it, but I'm not even on the right thing. So Lex Wexner was the guy who funded the majority of his ventures coming in and whatever. This is the guy who owned Abercrombie and Fitch and also Victoria's Secret. Well, here's the thing. When you Google it, he was a Russian Jew. Now, after Elon Musk, oh my God, frozen slip. After Jeffrey Epstein gets caught, and he get caught in Palm Beach, he does like this deal. He supposedly is on the registry, I believe. After that happened, certain people optically move away from him. We don't know if they stop working with him. You know who becomes his next donor? Or the next person, and this is a guy who's really known for him, is a guy named Leon Black. Leon Black funds, after he gets in trouble, funds the rest of the Epstein shit. Like, he's known as Epstein's second financier. Okay? Ironically, Leon Black, you get to realize he's a businessman and philanthropist of Jewish heritage. I don't know. This could be all coincidence, right? I'm going to say it's coincidence, right? Like, it's kind of spooky. So I only point that out because as Oracle, I'm telling you, Oracle is going to be the biggest thing. It's wedged in, and the government is supporting it, that it can't fucking lose. If it loses, it's going to be catastrophic. So Oracle owner is Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison born to a Jewish mother, or former Jewish household. His son, that owns Paramount Skydance, David Ellison, what you get to realize is that that's the next frontier of where influence, if you want to look for it, if you're one of those facetious people that believe people have agendas and they could push it across when they're really powerful and they're from certain ilks, that's where it's going to come from. Oracle, 100%. 100%. Anyway, let's not get too much into this. There's also some other people and other names, that kind of start like creeping in this shit. It gets a little spooky, Chad. I can't even lie to you. It gets really spooky. There is a let me see. I'm trying to It's crazy how power is concentrated. There's a photo that got released in the Epstein files. This shit is interesting, Chad. I can't even lie to you. Without getting too much into it. So this is Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, at a dinner with Jeffrey Epstein, and also not pictured is another person named Peter Thiel, who's also interested in. I ain't gonna lie, all these billionaires, they really got some stories, Chad. The more you look into this, you're like, either you're going crazy or this is too much coincidence. Either you're going crazy or this is too much goddamn coincidence. If you don't know who Peter Thiel is, I don't know if you guys know about the origin of Elon, but Elon Musk was one of a few people who started PayPal. And he co-founded PayPal, and he was removed from being a CEO after he merged X.com with Confinity. Now, there's something called the PayPal Mafia, because low-key PayPal is the singular company that spawned the most billionaires from the owner group. Here were the people involved with it. Number one is Peter Thiel. We'll talk about him in a second. Obviously, Elon Musk, and there's a few other people that ended up doing some other good stuff that ended up, some of them founded YouTube. Some of them did Yelp. Like, it's a lot. These guys are like the Avengers. But one of the reasons why Elon supposedly left PayPal, him and this guy didn't get along. Peter Thiel. He's an interesting guy, but like, you would never know what the fuck he's up to. Peter Thiel has a company called Palantir, which maybe you guys have heard it. This is a guy who he's like this libertarian type of guy, which means that he doesn't want the government in nobody's business. He's actually trying to build silos in the middle of the ocean that governmental laws could not fuck with him. Didn't work, but still, that's his thing. Notoriously, he supported libertarians, who had that ideology, who ran for government. Palantir is even another company that it's a little bit confusing. I'll try to explain it in short, but it's a data company. It's a data analyst company. You're going to hear this guy's name. His name is in the Epstein files too, but his name is also intricately tied to politics. Palantir is this company that claims that it's basically Big Brother. That's the best way to explain it. Their number one customer is the government. It's military. It's of that sort. And what they sold the government on is that it's basically Big Brother technology. They said, well, hey, we could figure out what someone's doing every minute of the day. They basically told the government, we have the resources and technology that if you wanted to spy on your citizens, you can. Well, the reason why they adopted this is that after 9/11, right, which is, September 11th, 2001, the government wanted a way, not necessarily to track residents, but to find out about terrorists. So this guy came in and says, oh, yeah, we would have been, if you fucked with us, we would have been showed you all the terrorists. By the way, it's reported that supposedly they might be also being used by ICE to figure out illegal aliens in the United States and how they're moving. So maybe they could give data to say, yo, go to this city on this block. There's like 40 of them. Now, granted, usually people who are illegal have limited footprint, but that's what their technology is. It's analytics. It helps government agencies, military. This is some spooky shit. It's Big Brother. This guy has sold this thing. Their claim to fame is supposedly they have taken credit for being so good at finding anything and anyone all over the world. They have claimed that Palantir was important and integral in finding Osama bin Laden. Because of that, Wiley reporters have played a significant role. Because of that, they have government contracts through the asshole. Like, it just, come on. If you're the fucking company that, now some people believe that's not true and it was cap. Regardless, it's a really spooky company. This guy who owns it, Peter Thiel, is kind of like a shadowy figure in the government. He has his own agendas that sometimes align with other people. He's a very interesting person. But yet they claim the hunt for bin Laden drew on unfathomable rich database. He's in the Epstein files helping Epstein with a lot of data things. Keep in mind, a lot of what he's doing is kind of vague. A lot of people don't really know what he's doing. Anyway, I'll leave that there. I don't want to keep going down that rabbit hole, but I just kind of give you a little lump sum of what was going on in a sense of AI currently, the players involved, these kind of inevitable adjacent links to not necessarily Epstein, but possibly future corruption or maybe another Epstein. And then the figures who, no matter what happens, and a Jeffrey Epstein could be thought of as, there's always going to be a Jeffrey Epstein, but it's always a Jeffrey Epstein being a scapegoat. You see who he's having dinner with. The people he's having dinner with only got 50 times more powerful, and they're still here. He's dead. It's kind of reasonable to think if he was talking to the most powerful people in the world, if they even thought he was doing something wrong, they could have got him out of the way then. Why didn't they? Yeah. If you guys ever have time, Twitter is a good resource, but you should just, everybody I've named, just type in their name and just Epstein. And you'll see some shit. So him and Peter Thiel, right? Jeffrey Epstein says, I keep hearing your intentionality argument. Imagine if this mess is what Obama really wanted. Iraq, Iran, Libya, Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Egypt. We would have to admit strategy brilliantly executed. Thiel says the word intentionality argument would center around making sure the U.S. get less involved with the world. The more of a mess with just lots of bad guys on different sides, the less we will do. So, without getting too much in, and there's another one from Jeffrey to him saying Brexit, which is the British exiting some European Union. Then there's Epstein on tape advising former Israeli prime minister to approach Peter Thiel.
He thought there was two cyber companies. Look out, and even though I know Peter, I've never met Peter Thiel. And everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange, like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks there under drugs.
However, he has a company called Palantir, Pallen Tier. Palantir is Peter Thiel's company. And look out.
Palantir, Palantier?
Yes.
How you write Thiel? Thiellly?
Thiel.
Lly.
No. Thiell.
Okay.
Why is Jeffrey Epstein advising an Israeli prime minister?
So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of the best. I've never met him. He's going to come here next week. So I wanted to talk to him after I talked to you.
Okay.
He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, they pay Larry $1 million a year just to advise them.
Andreas and?
Andreessen, Andreessen, and Horowitz.
And Howard.
Horo, Horowitz.
What they are? It's a lobbyist. What they are doing?
They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley.
Well, bigger than Sequoia or Kleiner
These are the new Kleiner Perkins. Everybody, these are the smart boys. Mm-hmm. So those two companies right away, in terms of, I said that we need now in the next 3 weeks if you're going to leave.
It's interesting. Then you hear about the Rothschilds. This is Peter Thiel.
It's about Palantir's surveillance of the American people, sir? Or any of your connections to Jeffrey Epstein? I think people are rather concerned about that last particular one. You're setting up a Big Brother surveillance system, and people know it, sir. Do you think the American people want this surveillance tech being used against them? Any comments at all on the Epstein connections? You were meeting with them? People are waking up to what you're doing there, sir. That's why we're here covering this.
Interesting.
With Alex Karp, who is
interesting. Oh, Peter Thiel also, you know, he has really these radical views of how he feels the world should work. And apparently he had shared before that he didn't feel like women should vote. And they didn't like that too much. Anyway. Interesting. It's a lot of shit with this, man. It's a lot of shit with this. By the way, remember, all these guys, they're going to use the excuse of, now we only fuck with Epstein until he got caught. But he got caught pretty early. The Leon Black dude, who they think is a co-conspirator, this guy, and so we have a license plate number. It said Leon Black was helping Epstein track women. Funny part about him, not only is he Jewish, he had a name change. Really, his full name before his family name change was Leon Blakowicz, which supposedly it's clearly Jewish. They claim there was some type of either infidelity or something in the family, and then they changed his name to Black. Interesting. I don't know. Well, that's not, whatever fighter that is not him, but interesting, man. Yeah, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole no more, but I think I gave you guys enough of a thing that you guys could think about in terms of how deep that rabbit hole is. Very interesting. J. Cole.